Yo, 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 what's up, everybody? Thank you for tuning in to yet again another fantastic indie creator interview. It's your Cape Crusader Cody, and we're keeping it geekly with such an awesome creator, Brandon Montclare. We're here to talk about DuckTales and everything in between. Brandon, you've worked on so many awesome titles: Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur, Rocket Girl, Fearsome 4, Batman Legends, and so much more. It's an honor to have you on the show. How are you doing this morning?
Cody, I'm doing great. Thanks for inviting me.
Absolutely. And we were talking backstage about this. DuckTales has always been kind of a huge part of my childhood. I had Tad Stones on Darkwing Duck, and we talked a lot about DuckTales during that interview as well. I mean, touching on a series that aired in 1987, had their first comic run 1988 to 1990, 13 issues. How does it feel to be taking on the mantle, like 20, 30 years later?
Yeah. Well, I watched the cartoon when I was a kid. I watched everything back then. And DuckTales, looking back at a lot of that stuff, it holds up a lot better than most 80s cartoons that everybody seems to be, seems to have held on to. No, it's been a lot of fun. And when I was offered the opportunity to do it, I really did jump at it, not just because of DuckTales, which I think is huge. And I think, people, you said you're a lot younger than me, and even you say you grew up with it. I guess it would be on, the reruns and the syndication, I suppose, right? Yeah, it's like, my people my age, it's, everybody remembers it. Everybody sings the song when you tell them you're working on it. I got to put up with a lot of woo-hoos, but it's a lot of fun. And, but more so than even the cartoon, just the kind of the history of Uncle Scrooge as a character who's been around so long and has been such a popular, iconic figure. Not so much in the last few decades here in the United States, but in Europe, it's still like one of the biggest characters. And so I've been in this business long enough, so I have a lot of comics. I know a lot of I'm lucky enough to know a lot of comics people from all over the world, and they're like blown away. It's like telling somebody that here that you're doing Wolverine, because Uncle Scrooge really is such a big character. So it's very much a DuckTales book. It's 100% in the 1987 continuity. That's just kind of the mandate from the gig, right? Disney wanted to keep it, don't mix in the 2017 stuff. Just keep it with the original continuity. But so much of that original continuity has the Carl Barks stuff from the 50s and 60s and 70s and 80s, and a lot of Don Rosa influence in it. Because Don Rosa was so influenced by Barks, that it's really like kind of picking up a very prestigious and title that I'm very happy to play a small part on.
Absolutely. So I'm curious. You've worked on a lot of awesome titles. Batman Legends is so cool. Like when I was looking you up and I seen that, I was like, dude, this man has touched so many just things from my childhood that I've fallen in love with. Where did it all begin for you as a comic book creator?
Well, I was for a long time before I was a creator. I was saying I was I worked in a comic shop. I owned a comic shop, but even before that, before freshman year in high school, so between 8th and 9th grade, I started selling comics at the local convention. I'm in New York City, so it's you kind of have opportunities to do that. So it's just buying and selling back issues and having fun doing that, and that was a great experience. And at 19, I had an opportunity to buy in that would. So by the time I was 19, that would have been the mid 90s, and kind of the entire industry was crashing. Comic shops and whatnot, which is of course not good for the industry. But for a 19-year-old, it gave me an opportunity to kind of get in and do that. So I owned a comic shop up in Scarsdale, New York, called Alternate Realities. I'm down in the city now. That's about 30 minutes north of New York City. But that was a huge experience, and it was a lot of fun, but it was a big grind. It was, I was working 80-hour weeks at least, doing a lot of stuff. As cool as it was at 19 is what I often say. Didn't feel so cool in my mid 20s. So I relocated out to California for a couple of years, and started as went back to school. Started as actually an intern at a company called Tokyo Pop that does manga translations and whatnot, but they were also doing some original stuff. And that was kind of like the Wild West, a lot of crazy stuff going on at Tokyo Pop. But it was, again, the chaos was good for somebody like me because it gave me an opportunity to do a lot of stuff. And a lot of people at Tokyo Pop had backgrounds outside of comics, right? They were just like book people and magazine people. That was working with creators, American creators, international creators, I guess, but mostly American creators doing stuff in kind of a manga style was kind of an initiative. And that was just, like I said, tons and tons of work. And then from there, I came back to New York. I got a job at DC Comics as an assistant editor to Bob Schreck. That's where I worked in the Bat Office for a long time. So I got to do a lot of cool Batman books, including regular Batman and Detective, but special stuff like Paul Pope's Batman Year 100, Matt Wagner's Batman books, a lot of cool stuff. And then I went up to Vertigo, where I worked on Hellblazer and Sweet Tooth with Jeff Lemire, and Madame Xanadu again with Matt Wagner. Lots of great stuff. Day Tripper was a big book for us. I worked on All Star Superman and All Star Batman, which were big books. So at that point, I had written a little bit way back in Tokyo Pop. None of it's very good. I tried to, I don't always mention it because it's pick up some of that stuff and it makes me embarrassed. But I think that's a good thing, because when you look back at your early stuff, if you think it's your best stuff, I guess you haven't learned too much. But then, so I was pretty well networked, and like I said, started getting gigs. Some of my early work was for Marvel. That Fearsome 4 miniseries was a lot of fun, that tied into events called Fear Itself. And I did a one-shot for a Chaos War, which was like, again, these are all summer events, right? So Chaos War was, Hercules fighting against the god of death, and it was a summer event that went through everything. And Fear Itself was a Matt Fraction event where it went through the whole Marvel universe. And those are the types of gigs that you usually break in on, and that's what I did. That's
so good. 19-year-old Brandon would be so impressed, right? Like,
oh yeah. It's living the dream.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just loved how I would have never guessed the manga like experience. Do you actively read manga still, or?
Some. I really do. There's so much of it, and a lot of the old stuff I read. And I was a manga fan to an extent. I wasn't like, this would have been like Tokyo Pop kind of was kind of like the beachhead of the manga invasion in a lot of ways. And that's when it was not just for the product they were putting out, but just that they had a lot of placement in bookstores and whatnot. So the conversation going on, I guess this would have been around 2000, maybe a little after that, was, oh, look, you walk into Barnes and Noble, or you walk into your local bookstore, and they have aisles and aisles of this thing called manga. And it's not just, the kind of typical comic collector. It's a lot of girls reading. It's a lot of all that other stuff. So books like Akira and a lot of the Miyazaki, Nausicaa, and books like that had, done pretty well when I was a kid, and I enjoyed those growing up. And I still read some of the old stuff, but you can pick up a book like, I learned this at Tokyo Pop doing some work for them, like Marmalade Boy, which was just like a romance, a comedy of error romance where, these two characters always wanted to get together but never could. And I'll describe it now with, it sounds so boring and so passionless because it's not really the type of genre of things that I normally read, but it was just so well done that, the storytelling, that it really did stick with me. And I think I learned a lot from the manga experience, as much as I don't keep up with anything except the hits I keep up with now and some of the classic stuff.
Yeah, the manga stuff it blows my mind. They can take a sport like baseball and just make a whole series out of it, and it will just grab you by the heels and just suck you in. And I just love it. Do you think it influenced any of your writing, like during your stint there?
Yeah, it definitely did. I feel sometimes that I don't want to come off as highfalutin, as Ben Grimm might say, but it really, I kind of am a formalist. I'm a structural. I start with structure, even though I do kids books, and hopefully I have good characters that are memorable and everything else like that. But to me, it's really about process and kind of setting things up. I'm not like Stephen King is kind of famous for saying, "Oh, I just kind of get these characters in my head and I just keep writing, and then when the story kind of reveals itself and puts on paper," which a lot of comic people work that way also. But for me, it's all very measured and planned out. And so anything I read, I actually take a lot out of it, especially if it's good. And like I said, all this manga is really good. So it wouldn't be so much that, well, I want to. Well, I guess there's some things you do want to recreate. Some things, like I said, the comedy was so good in a lot of those books. Like I said, and long form, subtle how to create a tone, how to create an atmosphere. I think does a lot of that does come from manga.
Awesome. We have our good friend Anthony Jameson stopping in to say, hey, good morning. Welcome to the stream. Everyone that is watching, we are here chatting with Brandon about his awesome ongoing series, DuckTales. This is dropping, you said November 6th?
That's correct.
So here is a link, guys, to make sure to get your pre-orders in. Do you know when the final cutoff is?
I think it was actually just yesterday, right? This week, maybe. or what's it? It's the days blend into one another. I guess the day before it was on Monday, so even though Monday was a holiday, it was. But having worked in retail a long time, I know it still definitely helps to have to tell your retailer that you want a copy, so you get one, of course. But you can always do order adjustments, or you can do advanced reorders if you're a comic shop. So if they see a lot of demand, they'll start asking for more. And even if it sells out these days, Dynamite will do a reprint if it's warranted and everything else. So it still helps even after the FOC to ask. And that, I don't say that just for DuckTales, obviously. I say that for any book because everyone's always hustling their new titles, and if you feel that you missed your FOC as a fan, like I said, there's still a lot. Still asking your local shop, I think, helps a lot.
Yeah, so go to your local comic book shop, ask to add this to your pull list. Get issue number 2 and 3 as well. This is an ongoing series. You have nothing to lose. We were talking previously about how, Scrooge is just a huge celebrity in Europe. That kind of took me by surprise. I love finding out stuff like that. How'd you feel when you initially, was reached out to about this? Like, what did that feel like? Were you kind of, maybe nervous about taking on such a big IP?
I don't get nervous about this type of stuff. I'm like anybody else. You have your anxieties, but I've never been really worried about work, which is just how I'm wired. It's not because of any. I've been at it a long time, I suppose. Maybe if it made me nervous, I wouldn't have stuck around. But it's I take it as a big challenge. And in my career, I've gotten to work with Jim Lee and Frank Miller, and Frank Whiteley, and Grant Morrison, and Mike Kaluta, and Simon Bisley, and Neil Adams, and a whole bunch of guys. And literally, not just as an editor, when you're working with that kind of caliber of like an icon, like a rock star, like Mount Rushmore type, you don't really edit much. You know what I mean? But you have to interact with them, and you do your part because they know what they're doing, right? So you're not telling Neil Adams that his Batman Odyssey story is a little goofy, even though the story was okay. But I don't know if that has anything to do with it, or that I've been in it so long. I really don't get nervous because of all those people who some I know very well and are genuinely friends. Some are just mere acquaintances. Some are just maybe don't even remember me, right? Because I was just a lowly assistant editor on the totem pole. But none of us are Shakespeare, if that makes any sense, right? You know what I mean? So it's just comic books, and I don't say that to belittle it. I say that's a great thing about working in this industry. You can take on all kinds of gigs. I love it doing like an 8-page story for for just about anybody, right? Just to kind of throw it in there. I do think there's something to be said about a trash medium. You know what I mean? Stuff that used to literally get you read it and then you fold it and put it in your back pocket and then your mom would throw it out. It's there's something liberating about that, where at least for me, I don't get too nervous about it. But that being said, I'm surrounded by comics. I'm surrounded by, like I said, my whole life doing this since I was 19 as a store owner, but I guess 12 or 13 as kind of working those monthly conventions. So it's just I have a huge appreciation for it. And Nate Cosby, the editor of all the Disney stuff over there, he also does like Thundercats. They just announced Silverhawks. The TV 80s TV, I guess they call Nate Cosby to edit it at over for Dynamite. He said, I'm doing all this Disney stuff, and I was familiar with it because I keep up with the kids books market, or the all ages market. And I said, it's a lot of good creators working on those books, some nice titles. Let's talk. And the first thing he said, I don't know if there was a list of things, because I was before the conversation, I was wondering, well, Disney's such a huge beast, right? It could be anything that you're working on, and they do everything from Nightmare Before Christmas to a book like DuckTales to Gargoyles, right? And I said, well, if it's something I'm into, it sounds pretty pretty exciting. And DuckTales is, like I said, for me, it was a big deal, and I realized it as such and jumped on it. And like I said, it's to me a double whammy, because as much as it's oh well, Uncle Scrooge is big, but it's big in Europe, or it's bigger with older fans, or Carl Barks, people who kind of appreciate and know that name, who's the creator of Uncle Scrooge. That's all cool for the kind of professional Brandon. But when I did a book like Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur for 50 issues at Marvel, a lot of those people, a lot of that audience, that was the only Marvel book they read. It wasn't like Spider-Man fans necessarily, right? So to me, DuckTales is so huge. Everybody remembers that show. It's going to be a great way to connect with readers. And you wish you had a million people buying your book, whatever you do every month. And it's great when you can kind of build an audience. But DuckTales has got an audience ready to just pick it up and buy it. So I'm excited.
And, the more I dove into comics and like the interviewing side of things, like the more I started to learn. And, I was really surprised how many Disney like cartoons were based off of comics, and how much of that had a comic series circulating it. And I really thought it was interesting, too, that the animation aired first, and then they had their 13-issue run afterwards. What type of research went into, coming up with the script for the first issue? Did you, like, rewatch the animation? Did you pick up some of those issues? Like, what did that look like for you?
Yeah, so it was, I never do too much of that. I'm kind of a wing it guy. As much as I say I'm a formalist, I am that also, and I kind of structure it. But I can kind of pick apart. Maybe it's the editor in me. I can kind of pick apart something pretty quickly. So DuckTales, I already, like I said, it's been pretty easy to write ever since I started, as far as the voices of it, because that just it's stuck in my head for 35 years or however long it's been. It's so that wasn't too hard. I did go back and look at some stuff. Nate Cosby's a good editor. He says, hey, I almost want someone who's not a super fan, because then they get too lost in it. Yeah, it was just, it's not going to be a very interesting answer, unfortunately, because I said, yeah, I watched a few episodes. I still do. So if I said, oh, let me watch a couple of episodes just to see what's going on. A lot of that is because of kind of just the old continuity reasons, where it's like, I've been lucky enough. I worked on a book called Rocket Girl that was pretty successful, which was 100% creator owned. Moon Girl, Devil Dinosaur was created by Jack Kirby, but I co-created Moon Girl with the other creators on that team. So I kind of, I've gotten to do my own thing, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
To me, DuckTales is such a perfect property. The characters are so well formed. To me, it's just like, oh yeah, what if I can come in and pepper something, not so much like an Easter egg, but something that's like that. Oh, this is interesting. This was cool. I can use it. Good example is just the second issue. It takes place. It's inside a movie theater, by and large, and it's kind of a story I wanted to tell anyway. But then it turns out, so it's one of the ideas that is floating around, right, in my head. And then I said, well, let me make sure, because I sometimes have to kind of Google and watch things to make sure I'm not doing something that's been done before. You know what I mean? I don't want to be like, oh, this was already covered, and what's this Brandon Montclare doing? But there is the Scrooge-orama Dome, which was, built by obviously Scrooge McDuck in Duckburg to be the local movie house. And I was like, and then I might not have even done this movie theater story, except I watched that episode, and it was just cool to say, oh well, it's kind of this cool titled in this realized environment. I should use that. It just, like I said, I don't have an ego where I have to reinvent any of the characters, and to take nothing away from projects, creators who do that often, and projects that I've done it on. Devil Dinosaur, my Devil Dinosaur is very, very different than Jack Kirby's. You mentioned Fearsome 4 before. I had Howard the Duck in it. It was very, very different than the Steve Gerber Howard the Duck. But with DuckTales, it's like, no, this is such a great property. I don't want to kind of change it at all.
That'd be crazy if we seen a Howard the Duck, Scrooge McDuck show off in this, huh?
Yeah. Well, I think it's all owned by Disney now, right? Marvel and DC. But back in the day, Howard the Duck was, and I think got into a little bit of trouble with Disney, right? I think they had to kind of tweak the design just a little bit, right? Famously, they made him put on pants. Because originally, not to. I'm looking over at some of my. I have a Scrooge McDuck old PVC toy, and it's like, they have the. I don't want to say that they're pantsless in some kind of way that is risque, obviously, but just the design, right? They have the coat and or Donald,
Yeah.
Bottom of the duck and his feet. I think you can. To me, it's just interesting, right? Because whatever the copyright law is and the trademarking and everything that you have to do, Disney said, "Hey, Marvel, you can't." Even though it was a spoof, you can't do this Howard the Duck. It's too close to Donald. And somehow the settlement was put a pair of pants on Howard the Duck. So that would be quite a crossover. Maybe one day. I don't know. Like I said, but there was at one point bad blood between. I'm sure people are professional, so they work it out. But there was at least a controversy for a time between Howard and Donald.
I love that. I actually never knew that. So that's one of the reasons I love these interviews. You learn a little something new every time. Now, what does the Bible look like for a series of this magnitude? I know you said they wanted you to kind of keep it around that 1987, 1988 vibe, but what else guidelines or regulations did you have to follow when, coming up with the series?
Yeah, well, when you have a production Bible, which it's interesting because there was kind of that stuff was extensive when I was in the bat office. And there was even Hellblazer at some point was some interns years and years before I got there, over a couple of different summers. I think a group of interns put together an entire Bible for Hellblazer, which I made a Xerox copy of and saved because it was just so cool. But I never got any of that material from Disney. But and again, it all kind of filters through the editor, Nate Cosby, who has the unenviable task of dealing with creators who can be a pain, and they can, we can be moody and everything else. And then the licensor, which they're just doing their job, right? And they've all, it gets filtered through, and I get their comments and their notes, and it's all very nice and it's all very supportive, and they have not, knock wood, been onerous or hard to deal with. But these editors, maybe they're going and looking it up and they have that material. I've always thought up until you just said that it's in their head, that they know all this stuff. And it's like, how on earth do they know all these different nuances? So I rely on the support team for any kind of continuity problems for either Nate to find out or with his interactions with the people at Disney Publishing who kind of handle all that stuff. So it's and again, there's certain rules that are just make business sense for Disney and that affect the creative process. Like I can't bring in any, like I said, it's only 1987 continuity. So even if there's something really cool, and there's a lot of really cool stuff in the 2017 reboot, they say no, don't cross the streams, to use the Ghostbuster term. Don't mix in the different properties. We keep them separate. Darkwing has actually been separated out to a large extent. I did see your interview with Headstones, and Darkwing obviously started in DuckTales, but he was a fictional character in the DuckTales universe, and I like that kind of stuff. So it's like, I wish I could have Huey, Dewey, and Louie reading some Darkwing comics just for a scene. That'd be pretty cool. Like, no, don't. Darkwing's its own thing. Don't just if it really mattered, I'm sure you could have a conversation. But it's kind of like, keep that stuff separate. Disney doesn't want you creating. You could obviously, when you do a story, a monthly story, month in and month out, you have to create new characters, new supporting characters. But they don't want you to create new main characters, not like recurring villains or stuff like that, which would be, that was part of the job at Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaurs, is not just develop her as a piece of the Marvel universe, but like Batman has his rogues gallery, or Flash has his rogues gallery, Spider-Man has the rogues gallery. Create these bad guys that that can be a part of the mythos. So that's taken off the table with stuff like that. And to me, that only makes it interesting. If you're listening, and I don't. If you are a writer, if you're not a writer, but for some people who aren't as familiar with writing, might say, "Oh, that's terrible. You can't do this or you can't do that." It's like, no, every project is defined by the things you can't do in a lot of ways. And to me, that's what makes it interesting. It's kind of the challenge of the limitations and the parameters. And it actually, in my opinion, kind of spurs a creativity, and not in a problem-solving way, but in a good problem-solving way. Like, what it makes you focus on what really is important and what really works. So again, maybe that's the editor in me saying that in my editorial experience. But it's been a blast, and they've been great to me. Like I said, knock wood. I don't want to jinx anything.
No, absolutely. And yeah, I totally understand the crossing streams, but you gotta admit, it'd be cool to have like a Halloween special where they're like cosplaying like Negaduck or Howard the Duck, and that'd be such a cool experience. We have World at War comics dropping in. Say Rocket Girl and Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur were great, showing some love for that. Guys, if you're watching, right here is a link to pre-order. Once again, the final cutoff is already done, but you can go to your local comic book shop and have this added to your pull list. Anything you do in that aspect helps a ton. Tell your friends about it, have them to do it as well. Word of mouth is 100% free. We are getting close to wrapping up, so there's just a few more questions I wanted to ask. What does the collaboration look like between you and the artist? You know, do you like to have your script kind of like kept, you know, directly to the script, or do you give your artist a little bit of flow here and there?
I learned from Matt Wagner mostly, but also, just some of the things that both Kubert said. It was Adam at the time, and I wasn't working with him, but he was just kind of mentioned it that he wanted. Actually, referring to Matt Wagner, we almost did a project at DC. I don't know if we almost did it, but we talked about doing it while at DC, or Frank Miller, or stuff like that. Where my philosophy in writing a script is to give the artist opportunities to be visually interesting, to do cool stuff. You know what I mean? I liken it all the time, and I got to come up with a more universal comparison. But it's playoff season, right? And so baseball, if you understand baseball, to be a batting practice pitcher is what a writer should be, which is you throw it right down the middle of the plate so they can knock it out of the park. Hopefully that makes sense, right? You set them up for success. You set them up to be visually interesting. I write a very long, I'm not Alan Moore length, but I write a pretty long script compared to most. But to me, it's like direction. It's almost like, and I don't like using film terms too much for comics, because I think comics deserves to be its own thing.
Mm-hmm.
But something that you'll see in film a lot that a director does is give kind of maybe they'll give backstory. I don't give details like that, but I give motivations. Like this is how they're, not just what's happening in a scene, but kind of why it's happening and how characters might feel. And that sounds like it's not that complex. It's a line or two, and you kind of, I hope it works in the flow of the script that I deliver. But these guys are overseas and they're in Italy. I worked that way with Natasha Bustos, and it took a long time to kind of, we worked together for years and years and are doing some more stuff. But I have not had any kind of direct contact with these guys yet. Again, it's all through Nate spinning the plates, and he's doing a great job. I hope, as the series goes on, I'm sure that we'll get a little bit more direct contact and feeling each other. But the stuff's really working great on the page. The perfect thing an artist can do is make the writer think that you're following their script, but you're actually changing it. And that's what he's doing. Like I said, that's the editor in me. The writer in me is hoodwinked and said, "Oh, it's exactly how I asked for it." But the editor knows that Tommaso Ronda, the artist, is making everything every opportunity I gave him better, and then adding in stuff to boot. And I've seen the first issue, and other stuff is coming in, and it looks so good that it's I'm not going to mess with it.
It makes me really happy to hear that you include like the mood of the character. That was I went to the Joe Kubert School of Writing. Had Amy Chu as my instructor, and that was a big thing that they mentioned, was having the mood of the page, having the mood of your characters to help your artist like know or indicate what you're trying to express. So that's a really cool tidbit as well. What with this being an ongoing series, what type of adventures can we expect from these guys?
Well, the first 5 issues is a complete story, but broken up in that they all work as individual chapters. But the first 5 issues take place all in Duckburg, which is unusual for DuckTales, because DuckTales, part of the reason it's so great is that you can go into outer space even, or you go to obviously foreign lands and you do all these adventure and treasure hunting, and it's got, and very much so, it was influenced by the success of Indiana Jones. But Indiana Jones, especially Raiders of the Lost Ark, George Lucas and Steven Spielberg both made no, have always been very open about how they wanted to give it the feel of the old Scrooge McDuck, comics from Disney that they read as kids. So it's you'll get, so for the first 5 issues, the idea, however, was though Duckburg, which was all built by Scrooge, is such a amazing place that as much as Huey, Dewey, and Louie want to learn about foreign lands and that kind of adventure. Scrooge is trying to tell them that no, you can just kind of walk out your door and you can go to the movie theater like we were talking about. Or you can go to the library and there's a mystery behind it and there's a story behind it. And then just to keep it honest to the DuckTales flavor, though, all that kind of wacky, exotic adventure is going to be seen in flashbacks throughout the first 5 issues. And then after that, and then after that, we're gonna take it all over the place. They'll be fighting a mummy for an ancient treasure in one episode, and maybe giant robots the next. It's a great book to be on.
So Huey, Dewey, and Louie, which one's your favorite?
It's interesting that you say that because obviously, to me, they're all the same, and that's the beauty of it. I think you definitely could say, well, if I wanted to do a new take on it, you should differentiate those characters, and that's what the 2017 cartoon did. But to me, it's a character that's 3 characters, but really 1 character, and there's so much you can do as a storyteller with that in any medium, but especially comics, kind of have them move in sequence through the page. Where Huey starts something, you can think very easily in your head. Huey starts a sentence, and then Dewey kind of goes into the middle of it and changes it a little bit, but also continues it, and then Louie gives you the punchline, and it's all one phrase or sentence or a couple of sentences that all go together, but filter through 3 different people. You can do a lot of stuff because you always have the beginning, middle, and end with 3 characters, but you can do that visually also, where you can have, even just like I said, talking about a visual opportunity. In the first few pages, they're walking up the stairs, right? Because I want to give McDuck Mansion is such a huge, awesome place. So walking upstairs, why would you waste a whole page doing that? Why would you waste a panel doing that? Because what's really the point? You show the big house in the splash page, and that's it. But to me, it's like, no, I want to be immersive for the reader. So I'm going to take them up the staircase, and you have to make that interesting. And hopefully I did. I know Tommaso Randa definitely did, because you'll have Scrooge with Huey on the bottom, and then you'll have Scrooge with Dewey in the middle, and Scrooge with Louie on the top, and you can kind of set that up in your mind. In your mind, you can picture it, all the different ways that it can be done. And then when you're working with a great artist like Tommaso Randa, he does anything better in his head that I can think of, and it looks just fantastic. So 3 panels of walking up the stairs becomes a work of art.
That is awesome. Now, we just have 2 more questions to end the podcast. I always love asking for a piece of advice for any creator or new creator that's potentially watching, and then what you're consuming outside of creating. So for anyone that's out there looking to add some longevity to their writing, as a creator who has a couple series that have spanned a lot of issues, what would be your biggest piece of advice to them to help them kind of get that, plotted out?
Well, an advice I give to new creators, and I think the point is that it applies throughout your entire career. And I don't know. I certainly, it's something that I've observed. I want it to be industry wisdom, and then I want to get credit for it, right? But a lot of but that's not the point, right? The point that it's common wisdom, I guess, to an extent. I grew up as a little kid in comics, so I was always looking up to people, different creators, anybody I could ever get access to, other dealers, even just older readers and stuff like that, and that's all fine. Certainly, when you're a creator looking to break in, you want to talk to professionals and you want to try to network, and that is important. But the most important relationships you're going to have, and this business is all about relationships, are the people you break into the business with. Those are going to be your friends and colleagues throughout the entire your entire journey and your entire career. So you rise together. So as much as you say, well, I want to meet people who are working, yeah, you have to do that. But networking with peers is the absolute, like laterally is the most important thing, because, they'll give you the time of day. They understand where you're coming from. They're facing the same problems that you are in the here and now, like problems that a new creator has. My experience is at least 15, 20 years old getting there. You know what I mean? As far as the breaking into the business type of stuff. So definitely network, and it's so easy to do now with the internet. If you live in a big city, obviously you have all those opportunities to go to a convention. But with that's really the most important thing is network with your peers, because let's say you and I were breaking in together, Cody. And Cody is starting to get gigs and starting to do well. And maybe I got an 8-page story here. I get something stuff, and not this, but at one point, Cody is going to get so popular that he starts turning down gigs, right? He's like, I just don't have time. I can't do it. But my friend Brandon is really good. You should. He did this 8-page story, or he did this independent Kickstarter, or he did whatever it was. And honestly, like the people that I've risen with are the people who get me the most work now, or the people I trust, or the people that I like hanging out with. And so yeah, think don't work. You know, it's great if you, like I said, if you know people who are established. But I'm telling you, it's not going to be as important as your peers. So don't be, you got to not be a wallflower. You have to, and a lot of people are shy by their nature, especially in the arts and especially in this business. But to kind of do that.
Awesome advice. Thank you so much. That was really good. We have our good friend Connie stopping in to say, love DuckTales. Absolutely. For everyone that is watching, right here is a link again. Be sure to hit up your local comic book shop and tell them to add this to your poll list today. New comic book day, so you have nothing to lose. Brandon, last but not least, you know, outside of creating, what are you, watching? What are you reading? If you play video games, what games are you checking out?
I don't play video games, not too much. I play. To me, if I want to play a video game, it would be something I played when I was a little kid. And I want to play Galaga in a pizza shop, one of those table things, and have a wax cup with a straw and Sprite in it and a pizza. Although that's certainly no good for me. Wasn't good for me back then. It's certainly no good for me now. I have a 15-year-old and an 8-year-old. Again, it's introducing them to old stuff and new stuff and everything else. You talk about books I'm reading. Talk about Amy Chu. I just read her Carmilla, which won a whole bunch of awards, and I think they're doing the second one of. But that was pretty cool, and that with Sue Lee is the artist, and she's doing some writing for Dynamite for the Cruella. I think it's Cruella de Vil. Maybe I'm blanking on. No, maybe she's doing a different book, which I haven't checked out yet. But did read Carmilla, and that was a good book to read. Going out there, and it's you can spend all day reading new stuff. You can spend all day reading old stuff. It's a lot of good. If you haven't read anything yet, a recommendation would be. And I'm not the first one to recommend this stuff. Really, the Carl Barks stuff, who was the creator of Uncle Scrooge and just did the Disney books forever. You can say, well, I'm not into. Well, if you're into DuckTales, you'll definitely be into it. But even if you're somebody who reads Wolverine and Punisher shooting each other with Uzis and getting chopped up in sewers in 1980s New York, the Carl Barks stuff is just it's as good as advertised. It's masterful, and that's all been reprinted. In nice Fantagraphics hardcovers. Every few years he'll do a new different kind of reprint of it, but that's there's an endless list of things that you can that'll rot your brain in a good way.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for swinging by and hanging out with us. Everyone that is watching, be sure to check out those links. Add DuckTales to your poll list today. And tell a friend. I mean, this is a series I'm pretty sure anyone who is watching has grew up or has been touched by in some sort of way. Brandon, thank you so much for this opportunity. I hope everyone that is watching has a fantastic Wednesday, but most importantly, guys, keep it geekly.
Thank you so much, Cody. It was a lot of fun.
Give me just